to the Nerdstalgic podcast with your host, the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm.
Howdy Beans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Nerdstalgic podcast. I'm your host, Luke the Human. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're all good. As per usual, before we get into today's topic, I want to do a bit of housekeeping because I like to keep my house nice and clean. So, 3 things that you could do for me before we get into today's episode. Number 1, if you could follow me on Twitter at nerdstalgic_pod to be kept up to date on everything and anything that I'm doing, watching and reading and playing and all that jazz. Number 2, if you listen to this on Spotify, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And number 3, finally, if you're listening to this on Spotify on your mobile, please leave a star rating between 1 to 5 stars. If you could do all 3 of those things right at the beginning before we get into today's topic, I'll be eternally grateful. So, today's topic, we're going to be talking about Rio 2 from 2014. This is a continuation of my Blue Sky Studios movie journey. The last one that I did was the film Epic, which, if I remember correctly, it's a pretty good film. It's pretty great actually, but it's not epic. It's not as grand. Like, there's epic moments, but it's not as grand as the title says it is. And the reception to that was really, really high. A lot of people listened on Spotify. A lot of people listened on YouTube. So if you're one of them people who's been following the journey all this time, or if you jumped on with Epic, or if you're just jumping on here today with Rio because you're a Rio fan. There's a lot that I've done in the past. I have covered Ice Age, I've done Robots, Ice Age 2, The Meltdown, Dr. Zeus, Horton Hears a Who, Ice Age, Dawn of the Dinosaurs, Rio, Ice Age, Continental Drift, Epic, and today, Rio 2. So if you like Blue Sky Studios, if you like all those sort of movies, or if you just like animated films in general, please stick around because we've got a lot more to talk about now and sort of in the future. But yeah, so today I'm going to be talking about Rio 2. To be honest, I was a little bit disappointed because I generally thought that the Peanuts movie was next, and I really, really love that film. Generally, as I'm not going to go into it majorly, I'll talk about it more when I get to that film, but as somebody who didn't grow up in America and has the Peanuts movie and the Peanuts characters is not really that big here as it is in the States, I'm surprised how much I love that film and how much I generally believe it's an underrated animated movie. And it's really, really good. But again, I'm not here to talk about that. But I was a bit disappointed that the next movie wasn't Peanuts, but it's fine with Rio 2. To be honest, I've never seen Rio 2. As I mentioned when I reviewed Rio, I never had properly watched that movie either. And I'm still a little bit bummed out that, that Rio got a sequel and like the likes of Robots didn't get a sequel. I generally feel like Robots was incredible and rightly deserved a sequel. Even though we didn't need it, I'm still going to hone on about it. I still wish that movie had a sequel, but it's neither here nor there. It's fine. Rio gets a sequel. It made a lot of money, as we spoke about at the end of the last review. The Rio's trilogy, it made a lot of money, so it makes sense. But here we are today. So, the movie's cast. So, we have in the cast Jesse Eisenberg as Blue, Anne Hathaway as Jewel, Jamie Clement as Nigel, Andy Garcia as Eduardo, Jake T. Austin as Fernando, Carlio Brown as Audio Bird, and Christian Chenoweth as Gabby. So that is your cast. As for the production, so on January the 25th, 2012, while speaking to the Associated Press, Sergio Mendes, who co-wrote a song for the first film, spoke about the sequel, saying, "I think the plan is for the movie to come 3 or 4 months before the World Cup. Fox has been talking about it, and it looks like it's going to happen. We're going to have a meeting, and I think next week, and Carlos is coming to town to tell us the story, and it looks like it's a go." In April 2012, Deadline Hollywood reported that Jesse Eisenberg had signed up to reprise his role as Blue, and Anne Hathaway had also signed on to reprise her role as Jewel. In October 2012, Variety stated that Carlos Saladar had officially signed a 5-year deal with 20th Century Fox that allows him to helm live action and or animated films, with the sequel being part of that contractual agreement. Screenwriter Don Ramier died on November the 28th, 2012, due to complications relating to his head and neck cancer and positive diagnosis. In January 2013, Rodrigo Santoro confirmed that his return to voice ornithologist Tulio Montalio, as well as hinting that the sequel setting will involve the Amazon. 20th Century Fox and Blue Sky unveiled the first teaser trailer at the annual Las Vegas, Nevada CinemaCon on April the 18th, 2013. On May the 14th, 2013, that same trailer was featured online worldwide and attached with Epic. Entertainer Bruno Mars joined the cast as Roberto after director Carlos Sandahara caught his performance on Saturday Night Live. During production, Mars offered his own personal touches that better shaped his character's physical appearance, personality, and voice. So that's it really for the production. Not like Rio. There's not really a lot that goes into this movie, which is I've always found quite odd. I like these movies. They haven't got much to say about the production, other than these people were involved. It happened at this date and this time, and then it was released in this date, and which I always find quite strange. But the budget for this movie was $103 to $130 million, and at the box office, it made $498.8 million in return. So it did very, very well. But yeah, that's all I have to say, to be honest, for Rio so far. We've done the production, we've done the cast, we've done my journey so far. All that's left is to really get into it. So I'm going to go off and watch Rio 2 now. And when I come back, I'm going to tell you what I think and what if I like it or don't like it. If is it good? Was it a sequel that was worth being made, or maybe it wasn't? We will see in a second. See you in a bit. Right, so I've just finished watching Rio 2, and my first impressions are, and it's going to sound odd because so far I'm usually quite positive when it comes to anything that I tend to watch or play or read. But this one, I didn't like it. I didn't. I know, shocker. I don't hate it. I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's badly made. It's average. It's good. It's middle of the road. It's one of those where I would say, is it a worthy sequel? No. Because I feel like it was a story that didn't need to be told. It was just told because the first one made a lot of money, so they tried to capitalize on the story and the characters. That's just what it felt like to me. It didn't feel like it was worthy to be made. It was just a story that they put together, and that was it. And I don't know that for sure. For all I know, this could have been planned as a 2-movie sort of deal. It just feels not as good, not terrible. And I'm sure if kids like the first film, they'll watch Rio 2 and enjoy it. But I don't know. I wasn't taken by it. This was 1 hour and 40 minutes of it's all right, but it's not great. I think the only thing that I could really say is actually good about Rio 2 and the series overall, and I commented this when I talked about Rio 1 last year, was that as a sort of environmental piece, as a conservation piece, as a film about looking after the environment, with the first one was trying to show that these sphinx macaws are going extinct, that there's not many left, there's not many breeding pairs. It's actually virtually considered extinct in the wild now, and that the only ones that still exist are in sort of captivity, are in zoos. But all the other sort of in the wild ones, in Brazil and things like that, very rarely seen and probably gone completely, which is a shame. So, but obviously when those movies were made, Rio 1 and Rio 2, that wasn't the case. They were still in the wild. It's only quite recently that they've been considered extinct in the wild. But in the concept and idea of trying to get young children, kind of like what they did with Ferngully and films like that we grew up with, trying to get kids into the idea that the environment is important and that we should look after it and that we could look after animals and try to conserve and areas for nature and wildlife. In that respect, this movie does a fantastic job because in this film they're in the Amazon. There's a lot of problems going on in the Amazon. Is a ton of deforestation for wood from the trees, but also palm oil and mining and all kinds of loads of stuff, really. And it's really important because it's the planet's lungs that we look after it. So I like the idea that they brought the logging into it, that they brought sort of that idea that, there is a small flock of Sphinx macaws that are living, hiding in the environment, that hate humans, have a fear of humans, because wherever humans are, they lose their land. And that's a whole big story that Blue, he's from the human world. They call him a pet, but he says, well, I wasn't, I was a companion. And I like that dynamic where Jules' father, who is another Sphinx macaw, obviously, dislikes Blue at first because he has lots of human things and he's very humanized and he's not wild at all. And as you come to begin and come to find out as the story goes on as to why these macaws hate humans, and for good reason. Again, like I said, that in real life they are extinct in the wildlife because we have destroyed their habitat. So in sort of graining that into a younger audience is a good thing. Like, yes, we can't save the Sphinx macaw now, sadly, but we can do a good job for the future of making sure that other animals don't become extinct in the wild or just become extinct in general. So that side of it I liked. Everything else, it just kind of felt not needed. There were moments where it felt like Tarzan at one stage, where you had Kerchak saying to Tarzan of like, look, you kind of contact these humans, don't bring these humans to us, we don't want nothing to do with them and all that. And then what does Tarzan go do? He goes, talks to the humans, brings the humans, ruins everything, right? Well, he doesn't, but it seems like he does it first. It's kind of the same here, where you have Blue wanting to go get he's I think what's the name? I've actually got the cast name, so I remember the names. Not Gabby. Gabby's the poisonous tree frog. Eduardo. Oh, I can't remember. Anyway, he goes to get his owner and tries to bring her here and tries to like help save these birds. And that's kind of what the story is here, is the fact of Blue and Jewel have kids now, and that they are in Rio at the end of the last movie, and they see on the news that their owners are in the Amazon and they found a potential nest of macaws, and that Blue and Jewel decide, let's go on a family road trip down to the Amazon to kind of help them find these macaws. Obviously, Blue and Jewel and the kids find them first, and then we get the story from there. And it kind of does feel like a bit Jumanji at times. And then you have this weird side plot with Nigel, the sort of enemy from the last movie. He's in it as well. And it goes into very much of a musical piece. You've got Gabby, who's like a poisonous tree frog, he's a companion. He's like his friend. He's sort of accomplice. And it's so strange, so weird. It just, this film, it's one of those where it was like, I don't have a lot to say about it because I didn't much enjoy myself. It just feels very put together. It kind of like, well, we have an idea, let's just throw stuff at the wall and do so. It doesn't feel grand. It doesn't feel like it needed to be made. And I know it's this introduction, but it was one of those where I really generally sat there while I'm watching this and going, we could have had a sequel to anything else. Generally, not even, I know I bring up robots all the time, but they could have done a sequel to anything else. Or even they could have put the resources into making a brand new sort of story, a brand new sort of series, one that's not Ice Age, which again, I love Ice Age, but we all know how many of them they made. And then they made one more, and I've got to get around to reviewing that one eventually. But you know what I'm trying to say is the fact of they could have put the time and effort, the money, the resources into doing a new IP or doing a sequel to another film. Instead of doing Rio 2. But again, it just feels like they follow the money. Don't know that for sure, but that's just how it feels when you watch the story. It's like, well, kids would enjoy it, but in terms of a sequel to a film that wasn't that bad, actually, I quite liked Rio. I thought it was quite good. this one just kind of was like, what's this? Not, I don't. It looks like I don't have much to say with it, really. My overall thoughts are like, if you have kids and they liked Rio 1, then by all means put it on. They'll probably enjoy this one. There are musical numbers in it. There is sort of a football scene as well, or soccer, depends on what part of the world you're in. They are lot of there's slapstick, there's a bit of comedy in it. Some parts made me giggle, but overall, yeah, it just didn't feel like it needed to be made. Generally, I feel like Rio 1 tells a story that needs to be told and is a good story, and then they could have moved on. But yeah, so my overall thoughts is, if you have kids, they'll enjoy it. Otherwise, it's probably not for you. And this is probably going to be the shortest review of any of the Blue Sky Studios animated movies I've watched, because I just don't have much to say about it, really. Honestly, I really don't. That's long and short of it, really. It does a good job of saying that we should protect the environment, protect the Amazon, protect endangered species, and make sure that we have nature reserves so these animals can live and prosper in these nature reserves without being touched or harmed by human hands. All that is perfect and needs to be taught to generations and generations 10 times over until we start actually looking naturally after our environment. That is good for it, but in terms of everything else, it just was like, it's all right, give or take. Like, again, it's not terrible, it's not horrendous, it's not the worst movie I've ever watched. It's just very middle of the road. It's average. It's meh. It's okay. Like, yeah, you might enjoy it, you might not, but your kids will probably. Who knows? Depends what your kids like. But before we get on to the end, as I usually do, I like to do a bit of trivia. So there are roughly 150 Sphinx macaws that make up the giant 2 of the US poster, of the US teaser poster for the movie. The number of Sphinx macaws within that formation seems to loosely follow the real-life population of the species left in existence, most of which are kept in captivity around other parts of the world. And as I mentioned, Sphinx macaws, they are extinct in the wild. Its last known stronghold in the wild was in the northern eastern Bahia, Brazil, and sightings were very, very rare. So they are still around, they are still exist. It says population extinct in the wild, about 180 in captivity. Habitat nests in dry tropical rainforests along streams. Again, if you chop down the trees, the birds ain't got nowhere to live, and they can't live on the ground because they're beaten. Blah, blah. Also, this was a Don Remir's last film as a writer before his tragic passing. Yeah, which I did mention in the introduction, he sadly had cancer and he passed away. This is one of the last films he wrote. The boat the characters take up to the Amazon River is called Cheazula, a translation of Blue Sky, name of the production company. Although Eva is portrayed to be a terrible off-key singer, Bedel Gattaroyo, who voices the character, is actually a very good singer and accomplished musician. And the anti-Charlie was modelled and named after Charles Chaplin, notably for his mute mannerisms and signature bow tie. I was just about to mention, because I forgot to mention it as I read in that, there is an anti called Charlie, and he does do a lot of sort of mute mannerisms, kind of like Charlie Chaplin. You can understand why he's named after him. But he was, again, one of those things that I really enjoyed about the film, which is the fact of he had no lines. Everything he did was just visual based, but everything he did was just funny. And because he's an anteater, he does a lot of stuff with his tongue. He uses his tongue as a tool, as a slingshot. He used it loads of different things. It was very clever. But it was one of those where it was like it was a good thing, but at that point I was looking at the things to like. I had to dig. That's what the point I'm trying to make is the fact of I had to dig to find things that I liked, and I shouldn't have to do that. If I like a movie, I like it all or most of it. I shouldn't have to try to find things so I have a positive frame of light. And I don't like being negative. Even now, I don't feel, even though I wouldn't say I'm being negative, I still feel like I'm being negative, which feels a bit sort of not me. But yeah, there's not really much more to say about the Peanuts movie. I mean, this movie really. I mentioned the Peanuts movie there because it was on my mind, mainly because I can't wait to get around to that film. But that'll be the next movie that I look into I'm quite excited for that one because, as I mentioned in the introduction, it's not something that I grew up with here in the UK. I'm actually going to Google it quickly. Peanuts movie. Yeah, it's not something that you grew up with here in the UK. The Peanuts movies of Charlie Brown and Snoopy. It's not really something. It's popular in the UK. Like, yeah, I knew Charlie Brown was, and I definitely knew who Snoopy was, but it was never a cultural thing here. So to watch this movie when it came out, um, it just took me. I just enjoyed every bit thing about it, and I am looking forward to reviewing it. So that is the next film. The Peanuts movie is my next review from Blue Sky Studios. As I mentioned, I wish I could enjoy this film Rio 2, but it just didn't capture me like the first one did. And to be honest with you, before I wrap it up, it even though I know it's a Blue Sky movie, it just didn't feel like a Blue Sky movie. It felt kind of like, and it pains me to say it because again I don't like being negative, but it generally feels like Blue Sky gave the IP to another studio and was like, "You work on this film while we work on other films." And that's how it felt. It didn't feel like it came from the A team, the A star team. It feels like it came from the B team, the C team. It didn't feel like it come from the people that made Ice Age and Robots and even the last film, Epic. It had epic moments again, and it wasn't as epic as the Tolta made it out to be, but it was still pretty great. Didn't feel like that team made this movie, and that's a shame, a real shame. But yeah, I'm gonna stop now because I feel like I'm being overly negative, but I am looking forward to what comes next. I'm going to be looking at the Peanuts movie. I'm really, really excited, and I hope you stick around for that one. Again, I do apologize if I come off sounding really negative. I try to be as open as honest as possible. But I hope you liked what you heard here today for Rio 2. Please do go back and check all the reviews I've done so far of the Blue Sky Studios, my journey through those. Also, if you listen to this on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you haven't done so yet, follow me on Twitter at Nerdstalgic_pod. Rate the podcast on Spotify. That will be absolutely wonderful. And yeah, just thank you for supporting me. Thank you for coming along on this journey. If you just listen to the podcast just for these sort of reviews, for animated reviews or movie reviews, I've got tons of animated reviews I've done in the past. I've got tons more coming in the future. Same with movie reviews. I've got loads to check out, so this would be the best place to stick around. Or if you're looking for some video game stuff, some book stuff, TV shows, I've got it all covered, and I've got more to come. So if this is your first time listening to me, and you stuck around to the end, thank you very, very much. Please do check out more things from me, because I have been the host, Luke the Human, of the Nerdstalgic podcast, and I will catch you all in the next one. Bye-bye.